Set 5. The bird walked in. Not hopped, walked. Like a person, like those city pigeons he had seen. Head bobbing, all business, cool as you please, like it owned the joint. Walked across the window sill onto the back of Palmer's hand, strolled up his right arm, nipped Palmer's earlobe, ow, and hopped onto the top of Palmer's head. Palmer stood, rock still, afraid to move, even his eyeballs. Pointy little toes were moving in his hair. It felt like scratchy good. The bird made a sound like a chuckle, like it had just heard a joke, and in a wing flap was gone. Palmer turned and found it walking across the floor. Seen from behind, the pigeon waddled. Hunger had not been its problem. It was pudgy. The bird hopped onto Palmer's bed and took a walk around, with each step nodding approvingly, as if to say, "So far, so good. I think I like this place." Its orange eye never blinked. It flew to the bookcase, ambled across the booktops, pecked its pages. It checked out the TV, but did not seem interested in the program of the moment, the 5 o'clock news. It stepped through the circular UHF antenna like a show dog through a hoop, and it moved on to the top of the dresser, where its waddle tipped over Palmer's family picture, the candle that he made at school, and everything else that had been standing. From there it swooped down to Palmer's stack of comic books. The landing was a disaster. As soon as the bird's feet touched down, the flimsy cover of the top comic gave way, and the bird, with a startled "oh," Palmer imagined, tumbled beak over toes to the floor. It left a white, quarter-sized glop where it landed and marched over to the wastebasket. Palmer yelled with laughter, just as his mother came in asking, "What's so funny?" Palmer stuffed his blurted nothing something on TV. The wastebasket was behind the door that she had just opened. He willed her not to look. She frowned. "Why is the window open? It's cold in here." He jumped up and shut the window. "Time for dinner." Before she could answer, he snapped off the TV and the light, pulled the door shut, and bounded downstairs, announcing, "I'm starving, let's eat." When Palmer returned to his room after dinner, he did not see the pigeon. The white glop on the floor had dried to powder. He kept looking in the corners, under the bed. Finally, he found the bird in the closet, on the high shelf. It was resting on its stomach on the shoe box that housed the toy soldiers. Its eyes were closed. Palmer emptied his pocketful of Frankenpuffs onto his homework desk. He took off his sneakers so that he would not make too much noise walking around. He turned out the overhead light and turned on the desk lamp. He cleaned up the white spot on the floor. He did his homework. He watched some TV. He mounted some Beetle Bailey comics in his collection book. He ate his snack. He read 2 chapters of a book. He did everything he usually did on a school night, except he did it more quietly, and with a warm, giggly, "I've got a secret" feeling, and with a peek into the closet every 5 minutes. When his mother came in to say good night and to ask if he had brushed his teeth, he knew it was time to have a talk with her. "Mom?" "Yes?" She was standing in the doorway, her hand on the knob. "Do you think maybe you come to my room from now on, like you could knock?" He had tried to say it casually in his best "no big deal" voice, hoping that she would receive it just as casually and reply with a shrug, "Sure, no problem." Ha! When did his mother ever make it that easy? She stood staring at him from the doorway, her eyes blinking, her expression a total blank, like he had just spoken to her in a foreign language. Then a faint amusement overcame her face, and she said, "Okay," casually with a shrug. "Amazing." She smiled and closed the door. Too amazing. What if she wasn't as casual as she acted? What if she came around snooping? He had to give her a reason. He opened the door, and she was halfway down the stairs. "You want to know the reason?" She stopped, turned, looked up at him. "Okay." "Well," he said, it's like, I'm getting older now." He stared at her. How could he say this? she said it for him. And you're a boy, and I'm a girl, and you're getting too big for girls to see you in your underwear, even if the girl is your mother. So you want a warning, so you'll have time to cover yourself up, right? He nodded. Yeah, just one question. What? Aren't you still a little young for that? I'm mature for my age. She nodded thoughtfully. Oh, I see. She started down the stairs, stopped, turned back. How about besides knocking if I blow a whistle when I'm on my way? Her eyes were twinkling. Mom, am I still allowed to wash your underwear? Palmer closed the door. In another second, he'd be laughing. Palmer went to bed that night with a grin on his face. For the first time in his life, he was not the only sleeper in his room. He did not turn on the nightlight. A pinch on his earlobe woke him. He opened one eye to find an orange button staring back. The pigeon was on his pillow, sounding like someone gargling water. Again, it nipped his earlobe. Ow! Palmer swiped, and the bird flew to the foot of the bed. I'm awake, okay? Palmer wondered if his old pair of earmuffs was still around. A knock at the door. His mother. Palmer. Yeah? He threw his blanket over the pigeon. Time to get up. True to her word, she did not come in. Okay, I'm up. She went away. The blanket moved like a ghost over his bed. He pulled it back. With a gobble, the pigeon flew off to the comic book stack. Like the day before, it skidded off the top comic and onto the floor. The bird, thought Palmer, is either dumb, clumsy, or a comedian. Palmer dressed and went down for breakfast. This time he returned not only with frankenpups, but breaknuts as well. He spread the cereal on the snow outside his window. The pigeon did not have to be coaxed. It flew out the window and attacked the food. Over the next week, Palmer got better acquainted with the pigeon and adjusted his own life to take his new friend into account. From the library at school, he borrowed a book about pigeons. Actually, he sneaked it out. When it came to pigeons, he did not trust anyone in town except maybe Dorothy Grusick. It occurred to him that if he walked up to the front desk with a pigeon book in his hand, someone might see him. Though certainly not Beans, who avoided the library like toothpaste. Or the librarian might look at him funny. Or she might act nice and then, as soon as he left, report him to the authorities. So he slipped the book into his bag and walked out as innocent looking as possible. He had it back on the shelf in 2 days. From the book, he learned that pigeons go to sleep as soon as the sun goes down. This was called roosting. He learned that it was okay to feed his pigeon cereal, but that outside on its own it would probably eat some gravel. The gravel goes into the gizzard and grinds the food as it comes down, since the pigeon has no teeth in its mouth to chew with. He learned that a pigeon isn't very fussy about what it eats, because its tongue has only 37 taste buds. He learned that a pigeon's heart is about the size of an acorn, and that a pigeon's heart, as measured against the size of its body, is one of the largest hearts in creation. Palmer learned that in the wild, pigeons used to live in the nooks and crannies of high rocky cliffs. When they came to this country, they headed for the things that look like high rocky cliffs to them, which happen to be tall buildings and skyscrapers. And that's why pigeons live mostly in big cities. He read about the passenger pigeon. Flocks of them numbered in the millions. So many were there that when they flew, they would block out the sun and people below would have to light torches. And then people began to shoot them, even dynamite them. And by 1914, the last passenger pigeon was dead. There's something about pigeons, thought Palmer, that makes people want to shoot them. Whatever that thing is, he could not find it in the book. But he found much else. The book was 89 pages long. And this surprised Palmer. He never would have guessed that there were 89 pages worth of things to say about pigeons. But then, come to think of it, he himself could have written many pages about his own pigeon. And no question now, it was his. He could write about the pigeon tapping on the window every afternoon until he let it in, the pigeon striding across the sill and onto his bed, then flying from spot to spot in the room, perching for a moment at every stop, as if to say, just making sure everything is as if I left it. The pigeon banana peeling off the comic book stack in a clownish flop, Palmer finding his pigeon roosting in the closet every night after dinner, and the sounds, so many, so different. There were tootles and grumbles and rumbles and sighs and gobbles and giggles and even a wolf. His new roommate was a one-bird band. He thought about a name. He thought about how the pigeon nipped his ear each morning. In fact, it was always nipping at something, the Nerf ball, the gray soldiers, book covers. So there it was, Nipper. And simply because Nipper sounded like a boy's name, it became he. Before long, a routine had developed. Wake up, the alarm clock being nips on the earlobe. Pretend to be groggy when Mom knocks with official wake-up call. Let Nipper out. Leave food on the porch roof. He had bought a box of Honey Crunches, which he kept in his closet. He had studied cereal boxes and found out that Honey Crunchers contained a lot of fat, and fat helps keep a pigeon warm in winter, so said the book. Clean room. Leave no evidence of roommate. Go to school, or on weekends, out to play. Act normal. Return home. Let Nipper in. Nipper walks up arm. Stands on Palmer's head. Feels good. Nipper checks out room. Nipper skids off comic book stack. Laugh. Play ball with Nipper. Nipper would perch on the basket rim while Palmer tossed in Nerf ball shots. As the ball went by, Nipper nipped at it. Sometimes he caught it before it went through the net. Go to dinner. Return to find Nipper roosting. Homework. Read. TV. Go to closet. Whisper goodnight, Nipper. Go to bed. The hardest part of the routine came each day when he left the house. Act normal. How was he supposed to act normal in a town that murdered pigeons?